Hey everybody, I'm JJ Johnson. You're watching Reality Survival. So one of the questions I've got over the years is how much food should I store? You know, and usually the answer I give is as much as you can get. But so today I just figured we'd take a little bit of a closer look at that and just give you a couple of recommendations on food storage. And how much you should store up. So, as you guys know, I am primarily a prepper that is more focused on reality versus, the whole end of times kind of thing. And so, I recommend that people start, with just as a basic minimum of a month, if you can get that. I think that's a good goal to work towards for a very rational amount, And when you're figuring this up, essentially what you need to do is you just need to figure 3,000 calories per day and then, times 30 days. So that's 90,000 calories per person in your family. Now, why do I say 3,000? I say 3,000 because that's basically the amount that a full-grown adult male would end up needing to have in a situation where they're having to work strenuously and all that kind of stuff. That's probably going to be a little bit of an excess, for you to maintain your weight. You might be able to eat a little less than that. If you're a smaller person and you don't eat as much, or if you're a female or a juvenile or something like that, then you might be able to go with like a 2,000 per day or something along those lines. But the recommended amount that I think would be about right is probably at least about 3,000. So as far as what kinds of what kind of food should I get or whatever. So if you need to get 90,000 calories together, now it's going to be up to you to decide what are the source of those calories going to be, right? And a lot of people are very passionate about making sure that you eat, that you basically store what you eat, the stuff that you normally eat. And I agree with that to a point. I think that the first month, and I briefly talked about this in a video I did on the first 5 things preppers should buy, but I think that the first month that you get should be emergency food storage, stuff that's freeze-dried or dehydrated or whatever, that you can put away in a box and you put it back in the back of your closet. It's got like a 25-year shelf life. You buy it once, you put it back there, and you don't have to ever get into it unless it's an emergency. What I have found is the reason that I recommend that is because if you only get additional food of what you normally eat, then what happens is when it's a tight week or whatever the case may be, when you can't get enough to add back into your stock, you'll end up dwindling that stock down gradually, and you don't stay to the levels. Now, if you're a person who's really disciplined and you're very, kind of almost compulsive about keeping levels at the right amount and all this kind of stuff, then maybe that would work for you. But what I find is most people have tendencies to be really on top of things at some points, and then they kind of let things slide at other points, and then they get really good at it again and let it slide. And so there's these ups and downs, and during those periods is when that supply can kind of tend to shrink. Well, if a disaster was to happen during the point when that supply had shrunk, then you would be without. Whereas if you had just put some in the back of your closet somewhere and stored it away, regardless of what you have within your own stock, then you're going to have that as the fallback, as the emergency food. Now, don't misunderstand. I'm not recommending that a person or a family shouldn't prep or store what they eat. You should do that. Within your normal budgeting, I think that it's a good idea to have as much food in your pantries as you can all the time. This is something that I'm constantly on my wife about, and when we go shopping, I'm always grabbing extra cans. I'm always putting stuff in there, and it's excess to what we actually need for our week. But we put that in the pantry and we add it to it, and that way, in all reality, we probably have I don't know, at least a month or 2 months worth of food in just the pantries, probably. I've never added it all up, from a calorie perspective, but it's quite a bit. And so I'm not recommending to folks that they don't do that, but I just think that the first step is having the emergency stuff back in the closet. Once you've recouped that cost, then start adding that in on that weekly budget and doing the food that you eat. Now, I also think that once you get to that point, that you should start looking at additional goals, long-term goals. That's just for the initial starting prepper who's brand new baby prepper. I think as a good goal, a year's worth of food is a great goal to have. Now, you might say, well, JJ, you said you're not worried about the end of the world. Well, I'm not worried about the end of the world. I'm not worried about that kind of stuff. I do think that there could be, long kind of prolonged economic collapses and different things like that. I think pandemics are way overdue. I think there are some things, but I don't think that's going to mean the end of civilization. I think that it will rebound. There'll just be, like there always has been, ups and downs and things. And by having a year's worth of food supply in there, if there's a job loss, for example, with an economic downturn, people cutting their job and all that kind of stuff, if you're out of work for several months, if you have a year's worth of food in your house, you don't got to worry, you're in good shape and you can rest easy knowing that your family is going to be taken care of for that period of time or whatever. Now there's other concerns you have to worry about that, but food would be just one less one. If there was a pandemic and you needed to stay inside for a period of time just for your own safety so that you don't get sick and stuff like that, having additional food like that would be good. Another thing that I recommend on this, and this is just free flowing off the top of my head here, so sorry if there's not a direct format, but is buying food from multiple different sources, okay, as far as freeze-dried or dehydrated food. If you're going to do it, I would recommend getting different batches from different sources, because you just, I think that if there's a bad batch somewhere or something like that, you don't have a whole ton of it. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe there's too high moisture levels in the chili mac or whatever, and if you had bought a year's worth of supply from one supplier and that stuff ended up going bad after 10 years, well then all that's bad. Whereas if you break it up and you buy it from different suppliers, you're probably more likely, if there is spoilage in some, it's only going to be a smaller section, if that makes sense. The other thing that it does is it gives you a variety of different recipes. One of the problems with eating food storage for a long period of time is that you get to the point where you're like, oh, I just can't eat this anymore, because it's like you have the same thing over and over. So having a variety of recipes is important. The other thing I'll say is that it's absolutely a good idea to look into doing your own and storing your own dry goods as well, using vacuum packers and Mylar bags and stuff like that. I've got an article on my blog about that if you guys want to check that out. But having that skill is very important, and you can really save a lot of money as opposed to getting the freeze-dried stuff. But if you have the budget to do the freeze-dried stuff, it's definitely a good option to do because of the extended storage life. But there are downsides to that as far as sodium content and different things like that. You gotta just be careful what you're purchasing or whatever, and make sure you look at the ingredients and everything. But being able to store up your own dry foods, being able to dehydrate your own food and store that, and learning the skill of canning and canning from your garden and stuff like that can definitely make huge savings and make it more feasible for you to get to that 1 year goal. That goal is a big goal. If you look at doing 3,000 calories per person per day, that's about 1 million plus calories per person per year. So it's kind of just to round it off, 1 million calories per person per year. So that's a lot of calories you got to save up. If you're going to only go with 2,000 calories per person per year, that's about 730,000 calories. and then obviously 1,000 if you were going to ration it out, which is basically going to be long-term starvation, just kind of slowly whittling your body fat away. Then you're looking down, at 365,000 calories per person per year. So it's a mathematical equation. The answer to the question of how much food should I store, really you just have to fill in the blank on, well, how many calories do you want per day, and how many days of storage do you feel like you need to have. If you're more on just the disaster side of it, a month is probably going to be adequate for 95% of any kind of disasters that would affect normal society. If you want to go above and beyond that to cover extended job loss and to cover maybe a long slow economic collapse or even some of the bigger kind of events, EMPs and all that kind of stuff, then a year is probably a better goal. I mean, ultimately it's going to be largely dependent upon your budget, and it's going to be largely dependent on the amount of storage space that you have in your home. So anyway, guys, that is just some real quick thoughts on food storage. I highly recommend that you definitely look into learning how to can your own food. Look into purchasing a dehydrator and dehydrating your own food. And I think they even have personally owned freeze dryers on the market as well. And I'll try to throw a link to like a dehydrator and stuff like that below. That is one thing that you will probably see more from me once we get out to the new farm or homestead. Crossing my fingers. We're working on a deal now, and hopefully that will happen very soon. Contracts have all been signed and all that, but we still have to get to closing. So I'm not going to hope too much, but hopefully everything will go through. And then when that happens, you'll also see some more videos on not only food storage and stuff that we grow, but animal husbandry and all that kind of jazz too. So look forward to that change. I'm pretty excited about it. Anyway, guys, I would be interested to know what is your recommendations for food storage. If somebody asks you how much food should you store, what would you tell them, and how would you explain it, and all that kind of stuff. I think it's quite possible that I missed something important. This was just kind of a random video. I thought, well, let's talk about this, and it's just kind of stuff that's floating off the top of my head. So I'm not saying that I'm by any stretch of the imagination the end-all be-all expert on food storage, but these are just my thoughts on it. So anyway, guys, as always, I definitely appreciate it when you click thumbs up, when you share it with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And don't forget to live the 6 Ps. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. Stay safe, guys.